everybody, and welcome back to the 4th episode of I Have a Question, an educational talk show where we discuss local hot button issues and current affairs. And in the meantime, we also like to learn from each other and have discussions so that we become slightly smarter. If you've been following the show, you know that usually we talk about quite serious topics, so I'm so happy to say that today we have something super fun. I think it's super fun. It's astrology! Reintroducing my fellow cast members. To my left, we have Isaac. To my right, we have Joel and Farisha.
Now, every episode will be based on a statement established at the very beginning. We'll then take a poll, have some discussions, and then we'll take the poll again at the end to see if our opinions have changed. So every episode will have a special guest who will be an expert on this topic. So the guest expert will help us clarify any doubts, offer professional opinions, and provide us facts.
So our guest for today is May Sim. Welcome to the show. Well, she is the region's premier psychological astrologer. She founded Astrology Academy, Asia's #1 psychology astrology academy, and she's noted for the first Asian to have graduated from the International Academy of Astrology.
Drop the beat!
Yup, yup, yup!
Okay, before we jump into today's episode, maybe we can set the context first, right? And let's be on the same page with regards to understanding what astrology is all about. So May, can I trouble you to give us a very quick nutshell explanation of what astrology is?
I think let's begin with what astrology is not. So first of all, it's not the horoscope that you see at the back of the magazine. It simply means it's like, you know, solar system, all the planets go around, right? And when you give the astrologer your birth date and your birth time, it's like we press a pause button. Means at this moment when this person is born, here's where all the planets are. So nutshell, that's astrology.
I read from your bio that you do psychological astrology. Don't really understand what that means. Maybe you can give me like a bit of more insight on that.
So psychological astrology is like a profiling tool. So it explains, for example, why some people are nice to everyone, but they're very mean to their mother.
So that can be explained through the stars and the charts.
It's exactly what psychological astrology is about.
Damn.
Yeah. So now this puts astrology on a totally different level from that rubbish that you see at the back of the magazine.
Oh, shade!
I know, told you.
So the question today will be, does astrology matter to me? If it does, you will raise blue. If it doesn't, raise red. Okay? All right, at the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Cool. I mean, expected lava.
I mean, like, duh, I make my living from this, you know. Can you imagine if I say
Well, we're going to thank the sponsors today.
But I would say that like I'm on the spectrum of like almost flipping because
You always...
I always like that. Yeah, like, no, but like honestly, okay, so I don't really subscribe to it, but I also feel like every time I read something that is pertaining to my star signs, or if I go on CoStar, which is like all the rage these days, like, and I read it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally see this in me. And it's just like, if it's entirely not true, then how come like I can resonate so much every time something like that happens? And then I, want to be like irritating, right? So I'll go and read other star signs also and say like, okay, like what are they all about? And then I really don't resonate with those. So I'm like, right? So why does it matter to you, Well?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, okay, I've never really believed in astrology, but I think in some ways we all are constantly trying to figure out who we are. It started off with like BuzzFeed quizzes, right? And then at some point, I really was trying to understand different aspects of myself, so I did like a full chart reading. And that's where I got to your point where I was like, oh, actually, this really feels like me, this feels like me, I like this makes sense. And then I just started having a lot of fun with it. I think it matters to me because at that time, I was really trying to figure out who I was, and I was going through kind of like a chaotic, dissociative phase. And when I found astrology, strangely, that was the only thing that I resonated with. And I held it very close to my heart. That's why I have it tattooed on my hand.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to discuss later on during this conversation, like, astrology as a person, as a way to understand your personality and individuality a bit more. But before that, I want to ask like the both of you, how come you voted no?
Well, I feel like for me, I think that the stars and that's what I'm thinking it is, right? The stars and the signs and all that, they do tell us something, and they do tell a story, and they do say something, but I don't think it speaks about our personality and about who we are. I don't think that's where the stars surround that topic. So that's why I don't believe in astrology. Yeah.
Yeah, I think similar for me as well. And also, to be honest, I've never really looked into astrology before. But I have looked at like MBTIs and strengths finders and stuff like that. And I feel like maybe I like that more because it's like based on questions about what like your personality is.
Yeah.
But first of all, let's just talk a little bit about this profiling thing, because after all, I am a psychological astrologer. So quite a large percentage of my students are professional profilers. And one of the issues that comes with MBTI type profiling based on questions is that, here's the problem, it's based on questions. So when you're being asked, for example, something like, I always take initiative, strongly agree, disagree, that kind of, right? And if you just came out of a project where you took the lead, then you'll say strongly agree. But if you just got bullied on the project and you didn't have the guts to speak up, right, then you say, oh, maybe disagree. So you find that your answers to the questions change subjectively. Then the difference with astrology is that it's not subjective. It's not based on your answer to a question, but there is a kind of like a fixed answer, which is what most people disagree with, is that is based on the birth time. But at the very least, the answers don't change from your subjective experience of the last 24 hours. Other than today, can I just ask, other than today that you are meeting me, have you ever met a real professional astrologer in your life? Have you?
Nope.
No. So now imagine a world where you have never met a real doctor, and all you know about medicine was what your mother read from 5 websites. And then you'll be like, yeah, right. It's like, just because you read 5 websites and see, the website says this, like, of course, there has no credibility.
I cannot find any flaw in that logic.
Yeah, so when you actually speak to a real life professional astrologer who did the research, who has a degree in astrology, the things change a lot. Yeah.
And I know that you studied for years, right?
I did, yes.
So what comes into the curriculum of that study?
It's actually very complex. So an astrologer has to study astronomy. So basically, like the stuff that the NASA guys study, like the placement of the planets, the calculation of where it is, we have to study astronomy to do astrology. But the opposite is not true. So most of the NASA people don't know much about astrology. And so it's very, very technical. And the placement of planets is very specific. So like if you're born on this particular day, it's not possible for the moon to be in any other sign. So and the change of the signs is at a specific time and date. It can be 2:17 p.m. So if you're born at 2:20, it's a different sign.
Right.
So it's the precision of astrology is calculated down to the minute. So it's not like I feel your energy. There's none of that.
Okay, I think because I understand the charts-ish, and I can see like there's a split. I understand all the house signs and the sun signs and planets. But what I personally cannot link is the personality from the star into me here.
Yep.
That part I'm still a bit confused. Can you perhaps enlighten?
Sure. I mean, I like everyone to think about the birth chart. Like I said, it's like a pause button, right? So the solar system just goes on and on. And at the moment you're born, we press that pause button, and which means it's like you're an event that happened at a moment in time. And because you're still alive, you're an event that's still going on. So that means the fact that you're addicted to your mobile phones, for example, is because you were born in whatever year you were born. You were not born in the 1800s. And this is why there's generation gap between us and people who are, say, in their 60s or people who are long dead and gone. So what's interesting is, like, for example, you could have 100 teenagers and everybody's on their mobile phones, and occasionally you get that one odd guy who refuses technology. You know, it's just that one weird guy in the class who doesn't want to touch his mobile phone, right? But what if the chart actually says that he's a technophobe and he just doesn't want to deal with all these other people, and then his behavior corresponds to that?
I think we can take a look at astrology with regards to how young people see astrology. We can divide it into 2 main camps, right? Like people who see it as, like Narelle, like understanding their individuality, their personality, and then the other side is like for it to be kind of like using it to see predictions of like how the future will be like.
Yeah.
So maybe we can focus on like the first one first, which is like understanding personality. I'll just ask you guys also, like, I mean, maybe you guys haven't really done the same look into your signs and everything, but like based on generally what you've heard about, perhaps for the two of you, your sun signs, and for Narelle, like everything else you've read, and for yourself as well, like, do you guys identify with what is like listed for your signs? If you identify with what has been said about your star signs, like you can say, and you agree it's a blue, and if you disagree, it's a red. Okay, like, so at the count of 3, guys. 1, 2, 3. Really interesting. Okay. So we did an OP poll, and 55% of people said that they actually identify with the traits that's associated with the signs that they know. But so to me, it's not. I mean, that poll was just for fun. I just wanted to know, like where we stand. But for me, I think is the bigger implication is the impact of whether or not you use it to identify with yourself. And I see a lot of my friends saying, like, starting to attribute their star signs to perhaps like some behavioral issues that I find like a
Or
bit.
use it to justify.
Yeah, which I feel like is that really the best way to go about this? And it inherently also lets it be like, okay, since I'm like that, then I'll just forever be like that. I don't know.
So my very straight answer to that is the problem is not astrology. The problem is people using things to justify their behavior.
Absolutely, yeah.
You can justify your behavior by saying I'm from this country, that's why we behave this way. I'm like, if you want to look for a justification, anything will do, be it astrology or the fact that you like the color green. I just want to be quite clear, even when we talk about what is astrology, most people understand it as like a one sign. Oh, what sign are you? Sagittarius, Gemini. Let's do some math, okay? There's 7.2 billion people in the world, and there are 12 signs. So if we divide it out, if you are a Gemini, there are 600 million Geminis in the world. Fair, right? And when the horoscope says this is a good month for romance, does it mean that none of the 600 million people are going through a breakup or a divorce? That makes no sense, right? And for the entire month, everybody's going to have a great time in romance. So this is why a lot of educated people have a lot of like credibility issues with astrology. But I think the big problem is that it's too superficial. People go with one sign. We have a term called the dominant archetype. And depending on the calculations, you may find that your dominant archetype may not actually be your sun sign.
Right.
And it explains why a lot of people go and read about, say, they are Virgo, and then they read Virgo, and they don't resonate with it because they could have a Leo dominant or even a Gemini dominant.
Like, I want to take a look at like astrology as a form of like prediction. So I mean, my understanding of astrology came from the newspaper telling me how my next week will look like, right? So I immediately associate astrology to predictions. Like do you guys learn how to predict, and what is that based on?
It's basically you need to have a base chart. So it can be done on a human being or it can be done on a country. So like Singapore, our birth chart is set for 9th of August 1965 at 10 a.m. because that's when Lee Kuan Yew went and said, I now declare Singapore an independent country. So that is
announcing that he tripped, then delayed 2 seconds, the whole country changed.
So let me demonstrate this. Okay. So in January, if you all recall, like vaccines were brought in and everybody was very optimistic. It's like, oh, COVID is going to be over. But on 10th of January, I did a live webinar. I showed all my calculations and I told them that COVID will be back in Singapore by end April, early May. And it did. So basically, when you talk about the how did I know this, it's not like I got some message from the skies, it's by calculation. So if there's an indicator for illness and there's the trigger and the trigger comes in on the 21st of April, then it comes on the 21st of April.
But you need to have like multiple like points of entry in order to come up with the calculation.
Yes, of
So
course.
for example, if I say, when will COVID end?
You see, a lot of times when astrologers get asked questions, it's not the answer that's imprecise, it's the question that's imprecise. So when she asked, when will COVID end? So tell me, when did tuberculosis end? It's still going,
When can we first travel?
Well,
I don't mind asking.
that is actually more answerable than when will we go back to normal. So if I look at Singapore's chart, there's an indicator for, say, a travel indicator.
What do you mean by indicator?
So for example, like the chart is divided into houses. So an example, travel would be in the 9th house. Travel is always associated with that. So if I see multiple indicators that there is opening of travel or freeing of travel from a certain date onwards, then my answer would be quite clear to you that on this date, it's quite likely that you will be able to travel in some form of freedom. But when her question is, when will we go back to normal? Now, there isn't a planet that is normal.
Actually, I'm a bit confused now. Is it possible for you to maybe explain like what these 12 houses are?
Okay, so in a nutshell, houses will show up differently for each person, okay, but the meanings are standard. The first house describes how you present yourself to people. The second would be how you see value. So this affects your perception of money. Why some people will have poverty mindset and some people have abundance mindset. So the third house is like how you process logic and data. Some people are kinesthetic learners, some are audio-visual learners. And the fourth house would be your relationship with the family and your relationship with the idea of safety. And then the 5th house is more like self-expression. So it determines your hobbies, also your approach towards things like romance. What is considered romantic to you? Okay, the 6th house is for things like health, as well as the kind of work scope that somebody is suited to doing. Why some people are good with Excel sheets and some people are just, they're better at talking all the time. And the 7th house is partnership. And most people think of it as romantic partnership, but business partnerships too. And the 8th house is a complex one. It covers things like psychology, death, investments, but it comes together in a space of fear and vulnerability. The 9th includes a lot of these expansion concepts like travel, like philosophy, like religious beliefs. The 10th house is for things like honor and awards, achievements. So people with a lot of planets there tend to need a lot of assurance, validation from authority figures. The 11th is for your community, your friends. It tells me the kind of people you hang out with and what the purpose and objective is for these groups of people. And the 12th, the last one, is it's a complex one also. It covers everything from spirituality to charity to addictions. Actually, I brought something to show you guys. Can I have it? Yeah. Oh my God, that's awesome. So this thing is called an Ephemeris, and it actually states, you can actually see that, for example, this example, like July 1989. So for example, if a person was born on the 6th of July, so it'll be this listing, it says 6th here, and across all the placements that are written here is the exact positioning of the planets that occurred on that day that they were born. So, and of course the astrologer will need your birth time, so that we actually chart this onto that whole circle thing, and we can actually see the relationship of the planets to each other. So there's no guesswork and there's no hearsay. It's actually based on the specific positioning. It's like if you go to a doctor, this is a bit like, oh, okay, this is your height and your weight. This is your white blood cell count or whatever. So the report by itself doesn't say if you're sick. But an experienced doctor would look at this combination plus this combination plus this combination means you have appendicitis or something. It's the numbers itself don't say anything, but the doctor's interpretation will tell you if something's wrong.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, it's interesting to hear all these so far. I think one of the things that we covered earlier on was how a lot of things are pegged to the stars and to the signs. And I can see how astronomy is a possible way to use it as a value system to study things, to understand things, not so much in prediction.
Yep.
So how much of that, is healthy to consume, and how much of that is really actually a lot of interpretation, divination, as opposed to really statistical, scientific based that should be compared to that of doing medicine and medical studies?
I actually teach a prediction class. And one of the things that I do right from the very beginning of the class is to get people to look at their past. So that means if looking at the current predictions is accurate, therefore it should be accurate for when you were 13 years old. So my students do it and they go like, oh, mine says that I changed countries. And I'm like, and did you? Yeah, I was 13 when I moved from Vietnam to Australia. So that means the accuracy, the technical accuracy, the precision of it is by proof and technicality.
But the naming of the house example,
Yes.
right? Saying that this is about travel or this is about whatever, that is actually interpretation. Because if you were to peg something to like to say that the planet was here and all that, that is complete data astronomy. But to say something is a house, that's already interpretation.
The house is also in the stars, right?
Yeah, it's calculated. Why does the 9th house mean travel? That's
yes.
where.
Why? So the house is a star.
It's like
No,
a
it's
clock.
not. So it's like
360.
it's a division of the house, and it just means that at this particular time, the planet was in this vicinity.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who was the one that drafted this?
Okay, so who was the one who invented the English language? Nobody. It's an amalgamation of studies that have been done over years and years and years that simply produce that.
I want to ask, following up on that, and it's like in your experience with astrology, because one of my biggest fears as to why I don't even want to start is because I'm very big on making my own choices, and perhaps that's written in the stars, but who knows? But for me, I always want to. She knows. But for me, I've always wanted to be okay, I want to do, and I'd rather not know if I'm gonna fail because I want to dive in first. Yeah. So in your experience, is there free will in, I guess, after knowing predictions?
Okay, honest answer, after 17 years, events are predestined, but your reaction to it is not. So I'd be really straight with you. Like if the chart does say that somebody is going to leave their job, but you see, the chart doesn't say if it sometimes does, but sometimes it doesn't specify if you get fired, like kicking and screaming out of the door, or if you decide that this is the end of it. So what I think is people can decide whether or not they think, okay, it's time for a change, or you can just be angry and sue your company.
Can I jump back into the reaction? Because we also, you say like in the charts, it kind of tells you agak, like how you would react to things.
Yeah.
So that means the somewhat reaction is not free will also.
But that's where the consultation is useful. Because like, for example, the real story, one guy, I sort of told him that he was going to be likely to throw a rage at a rejection that he was likely to get from an authority figure. And specifically in that time period, he was making an application to a government thing. And because I warned him about it beforehand, now what really happened was that he actually did not throw a rage when something like this had happened before. And I understand like a lot of people would say that, oh, that's just because you just gave some random good advice and now he didn't throw a rage. But the fact is there was a pattern that ran, and we had proven that every single time that pattern shows up is when he's applying for something with the government and things don't go his way and he starts to throw things in the office. And I think the free will is when you know who you are and understand that you have the right to decide to be nice to somebody when normally you might have shouted and screamed.
Okay, wow, we really went through a lot. I feel like we've talked non-stop for over an hour and a half or something. And thank you so much for your time. At this point, maybe it's time to revisit the poll again. And the question was, does astrology matter to me? So let's vote on a count of 3. 1, 2, 3. All right. Hey,
I switched.
you're a convert.
I
Okay, but also because I think the question is a little bit like very dramatic.
It is vague also.
Perhaps for specifically the two of y'all, is astrology something that you're willing to look more into?
I think from this conversation, right, it's really opened my eyes to what astrology really means. Because I have to say, like, I'm quite embarrassed to say that I used to think that it was just the 12 signs and then nothing really more. But I think I'm really, like, you opened my eyes basically to, like, the wealth of knowledge that's out there already and the fact that there are, like, organizations around the world of astrologers, right? So I think it's something that I'll definitely, like, explore for fun, but I don't think it's something that I would subscribe to personally still. Yeah.
I probably won't be like as into it as like that, but then I don't know, I'm excited to now go back and then like looking at my birth cert and everything, and then I also feel like as I would understand MBTI or understand all these things, like why not just have one more thing to understand myself better?
Well, I think for me is I continue to believe the beauty of astronomy and I continue to believe the beauty of the stars and all that. But for me, it's pegged to my faith and it's pegged to my belief of the Lord and what that tells me, And I don't see that I'm the center of the universe, but God is. So that's why, to me, astronomy matters, the stars and the universe, but not so much astrology. Yeah, so thanks for taking the time to sit down and being patient just to share something that's so deeply personal and close to you as well. Yeah.
Okay, so for the people watching that have found this super entertaining and would love to get a little bit more information, do you think you can give them like a quick run through of things that they could go read up on?
Yeah, I mean, if you have never actually seen what a real astrological chart looks like, there are several places where you can go to get a chart drawn up. One is on, the first one is on my website. You can go to selfastrology.com. It's free. Just put in your birth information. Make sure you go look at your birth certificate and put in the right birth time, yeah? There are other places also. Astro.com also offers a free chart, like a chart drawing. And there are several places also where I think if you are into mobile apps, like some of the popular ones are, I think Joel mentioned CoStar. Another one is The Pattern, seems to be quite popular. So those are places where you can get, I think it's a more comprehensive kind of interpretation rather than, oh, I'm a Gemini or I'm a Sagittarius. You actually get much more information. And I think for the people who are trying to learn a little bit on your own, one of the credible websites I would recommend is cafeastrology.com. At the very least, you should be able to get a comprehensive listing of the meanings of planets, signs, and houses, and you can be assured that they are correct and they are canon in astrology.
So I want to thank everybody. I want to thank May so much for the time and really just sitting with us and sharing everything with us and answering all these questions. We want to thank you for joining us, and if you are with us still, please follow us on Instagram and TikTok. And of course, we want to thank our partners, OPPi and
Lyf at Funan.
Right.
We'll see you for next episode. Like, subscribe, share. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.